Imagine someone asks you three very different questions. What is the capital of Japan? How do you ride a bicycle? What does dark chocolate taste like? Each question points to a different kind of knowing. The first asks for a fact you can state in a sentence: Tokyo is the capital of Japan. The second asks for a skill, something you may be able to do even if you struggle to explain every movement. The third asks for familiarity, a direct experience that is hard to fully capture in words. Declarative knowledge is the first kind. It is knowledge that something is the case. It is the kind of knowledge we can express with statements, store in books, enter into databases, teach in classrooms, and use when explaining the world. Declarative knowledge is also called theoretical knowledge, descriptive knowledge, propositional knowledge, or simply knowledge that. The key idea is that it can be expressed by declarative sentences, sentences that declare, describe, or assert something. Water boils at a certain temperature under standard pressure. The Earth orbits the Sun. A triangle has three sides. These are all candidates for declarative knowledge because they present claims that can be true or false. This matters because declarative knowledge is not tied to one specific action or use. A fact can be used for science, education, planning, conversation, or problem solving. It can sit quietly in a textbook for years, then become useful when someone needs to understand a phenomenon or make a decision. The main field that studies declarative knowledge is epistemology, the branch of philosophy concerned with knowledge. Epistemologists ask questions that sound simple at first but become surprisingly difficult. What does it mean to know something? How is knowledge different from opinion? Can a lucky guess count as knowledge? A traditionally influential answer says that declarative knowledge has three core elements: belief, truth, and justification. In this view, to know that a claim is true, you must believe it, the claim must actually be true, and your belief must be supported by good reasons. These three elements are often introduced as the classic starting point for understanding knowledge, even though philosophers continue to debate and refine them. Start with belief. If you know that the library closes at 6, you cannot also be completely neutral about whether it closes at 6. Knowledge involves a kind of subjective commitment. You take the claim to be accurate. But belief alone is not enough. People can sincerely believe false things. Someone might believe a rumor, misremember a date, or trust a faulty source. That is why truth is the second element. Declarative knowledge aims at reality, not just confidence. If a person says they know a bridge is safe, but the bridge is actually unsafe, then their belief does not qualify as knowledge in the ordinary sense. Truth gives knowledge its objective side, the claim must match how things really are. The third classic element is justification. A true belief still may not be knowledge if it is just a lucky guess. Suppose someone guesses the exact number of coins in a jar with no evidence at all. If the guess happens to be correct, we may call it impressive, but we usually hesitate to call it knowledge. Justification requires that the belief be rational, supported by good reasons, reliable evidence, or a trustworthy method. A weather forecast based on satellite data, pressure systems, and past patterns is more justified than a random prediction. Justification connects the believer to the truth in a responsible way. It explains why the belief is not merely accidentally correct. Modern epistemology has not simply accepted the classic formula without questions. Philosophers have proposed extra conditions or alternative accounts. One idea is that knowledge requires the absence of defeating evidence. If you believe a museum is open because its website says so, but you also see a new sign saying it is closed for renovation, that sign undermines your justification. Another proposal emphasizes reliable cognitive processes. A belief formed through accurate perception, careful memory, or valid reasoning may be more knowledge-like than one formed through wishful thinking. Some accounts even ask whether knowledge must be infallible, meaning unable to be mistaken, though this is a much stricter standard than everyday knowledge usually requires. Declarative knowledge comes in many forms, and one important distinction concerns where it comes from. A posteriori knowledge comes from experience. You know it is raining because you see the wet street, hear the drops, or feel the water on your hand. Scientific knowledge is often a posteriori because it depends on observation and experiment. A priori knowledge, by contrast, is grounded in rational reflection rather than direct experience. Mathematical truths and some logical principles are common examples. You do not need to inspect every triangle in the world to understand that a triangle has 3 sides. This distinction shows that declarative knowledge can be rooted in the senses, but it can also arise from thought itself. Another way to classify declarative knowledge is by its scope and content. Some knowledge is domain-specific, such as knowing the rules of chemistry, the dates of a historical period, or the vocabulary of music theory. Other knowledge is general, helping across many situations, such as knowing how evidence works or understanding basic cause and effect. Declarative knowledge can also involve facts, concepts, and principles. A fact might be that photosynthesis occurs in plants. A concept might be what photosynthesis means. A principle might explain why light, water, and carbon dioxide matter in the process. Deeper understanding often comes when these pieces connect, rather than remaining isolated statements memorized without context. Declarative knowledge is often contrasted with practical knowledge, or knowing how. Riding a bicycle, playing piano, typing quickly, or kneading dough all involve skills. Of course, facts can support skills. A cyclist may know how gears work, and a musician may know music theory. But the skill itself is not just a collection of true sentences. A person can read every instruction about swimming and still be unable to swim well. Practical knowledge is embodied, practiced, and often automatic. Declarative knowledge, by contrast, is more easily stated, examined, corrected, and transferred through language. The contrast helps explain why learning facts and developing abilities are related, but not identical. There is also knowledge by acquaintance, familiarity through direct experience. You may know the taste of mango, the sound of a particular singer, or the feeling of cold marble under your hand. This kind of knowing does not require you to possess many facts about the object. A child can know the taste of chocolate without knowing its chemical composition, history, or origin. Declarative knowledge can describe acquaintance, but it cannot always replace it. You could read a detailed description of a flavor and still not know it in the same way as someone who has tasted it. This reminds us that human understanding is broader than factual statements, even though factual statements are extremely powerful. So why does declarative knowledge matter? It is essential for labeling, describing, explaining, comparing, predicting, and deciding. When a doctor identifies symptoms, a mechanic diagnoses an engine problem, or a student explains why seasons change, declarative knowledge is at work. It can guide problem-solving because facts narrow down possibilities. It can guide decisions because knowing relevant information helps us choose better actions. Still, not every fact is equally useful in every situation. Some knowledge has obvious practical value, while other knowledge may seem useless until a new context makes it important. Its value often depends on goals, but it also contributes to understanding the world beyond immediate usefulness. Much of what schools teach is declarative knowledge: dates, definitions, formulas, names, classifications, and explanations. It can be learned through memorization, and sometimes memorization is necessary. But isolated facts are fragile if they are not connected to a wider structure. Deeper learning happens when new information links to prior knowledge, forms patterns, and becomes part of a meaningful network. The sources of declarative knowledge include perception, introspection, memory, reasoning, and testimony from others. We see, reflect, remember, infer, and learn from people and records. Declarative knowledge is not all knowledge, but it is the shareable backbone of explanation, the part of understanding we can put into words and pass on. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.